Hey guys, I know what this is.
Of course you do.
This is the Bloody Benders. I know it.
Peaky Blinders?
Close.
But the Kansas version.
But the Kansas version. Oh. The whiskey blinders.
Nice.
Everything's always whiskey. So this story is like the Oregon Trail, but with one death for all that is brutal and bloody. And true, like the Donner Party, but more sinister and actually less efficient.
Jeez. Hell of a sell.
The Bender family consisted of 4 members: John Bender Sr., Elvira Bender, John Bender Jr., and Kate Bender. The rumors surrounding the Bender family were varied. John Sr. and Elvira had their children from previous marriages, so John Jr. and Kate were known to be stepbrother and sister. However, some whispers about town maybe speculated that they weren't their children, but a younger married couple who lived with John Sr. and Elvira.
Ooh.
Creepy already.
Yeah.
After the American Civil War, our country did a pretty embarrassing thing and relocated a bunch of Native Americans from the Osage tribe in Kansas to a new territory now known as Oklahoma. When this land was opened up in Kansas, it attracted a few spiritualist families. One of those families was the Bender family.
Like to live with these Native Americans?
Yes, as they said. John Bender Sr. was a man in his 60s when he and his son John Jr. purchased land in Labette County, Kansas. And this is about 7 miles northeast of Cherryvale. Really no one knows where any of this is. But anyway.
That's the closest thing.
Yeah.
700 miles for
So-
It was that close to Cherryville?
nothing else.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I love that they have all the information. It's like really close to Cherryville.
Yeah,
It's like,
fucking
where
asshole.
the hell is Cherryville?
700 miles is really close.
7.
Oh, I think you said 700.
7 miles.
7 miles.
Northeast of
That's why I was
Cherryville.
confused.
Cherryville is the fucking home of fucking...
Cherries.
Yeah. I actually looked it up, and it's like in between St. Louis, Missouri, and Austin, Texas. It's like in between a bunch of big cities.
In
That's
like
all
the ass
farmland.
corner of Kansas?
It is in the southeast corner of
The
Kansas.
ass corner
The
of Texas.
ass corner of
The
Kansas.
ruralest of the rural.
Kansas.
Kansas!
So John Sr. and John Jr., they had purchased land in 1870, and they registered about 160 acres of land in the Great Osage Trail. So that was the trail, like the only known safe trail, like passage to the west at the time. So this was in 1870. So a cabin, a barn, and a corral and a well was built on the property in 1871. And that's about the time that Elvira and Kate kind of showed up. So it was just John Sr. and John Jr. And then all of a sudden Elvira and Kate showed up.
So he was a single dad?
Yes, and she was a single mother.
Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch.
The Bloody Bunch.
The Bloody Bunch. The Bloody Bunch.
Well, I don't like this. Felix, change the channel.
You can't. You have to watch it.
It's riveting.
How do you know?
Wait a
How do you
minute.
get these rules? When you
I don't know.
got a
I
rule
just know
book?
them. So because of their house being on that trail, their home kind of operated like an inn. So people would pass through there. They had like a general store in front. You could like stay overnight. They would give you dinner.
Everything about this is fucking creeping me out. right
Yeah,
now.
like
there's
the
nothing
Hateful
else around them.
Yeah.
And it was, it was small. They had common areas, and then also there was like a whole 2-acre vegetable garden and apple orchard.
Damn.
And the weird thing was about this family, not only did it seem like single dad, single mother, they just had a lot of random rumors surrounding their background. They were known for being German immigrants, but there was really no documentation for them, or their relationships to one another either. Possibly only the male Bender, so John and John Sr., John Jr., were born overseas. And they're not even sure if he was like from Germany or the Netherlands.
What's the difference?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, at that
really,
point,
it's like,
Different types of mustard or...
Yeah.
and it was also, Elvira may have not even been German at all. She may have been born somewhere near the Adirondack Mountains. And she actually had some rumors that she had married a bunch of times and had murdered all of her husbands.
Ooh, Black Widow.
Yeah.
That she had 12 children.
Ooh.
But when she...
Tell me, what's new about that? Like,
That's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And
You have them.
The ooh part is the fact that she only moved here to Kansas with one of those kids. So, like, what?
Yeah, I didn't even...
What the hell happened?
I would not
gotta
have even...
eat.
so
Yeah.
them wild oats.
And some people even speculated that John and Kate, so the children, were actually another married couple, and they were just kind of saying that they were their kids, but they were actually this other younger couple that lived with John
cohabitating,
Sr. Yes.
interage couples.
Like a hot stepdaughter, stepbrother.
This is way too 70s.
Yeah.
It's like 1970s, not 1870s.
Right, thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
As it was said, John Sr. and Elvira were in their 50s, 60s, and everyone said they did not speak nor understand much English. And they really liked everyone to think that. And Elvira was described as a very unfriendly woman and sometimes called she-devil by neighbors. And her and John Sr. kind of kept themselves for the most part. However, John Jr. and Kate, their children, or just the younger couple that lived with them,
that was just chilling.
This is so nuanced.
they said that they had an accent, but they spoke fluent English. They were known as friendly, charismatic, and very good-looking. However, sometimes John Jr. was, and this is what was quoted, he was talked about as being a nitwit.
All right.
You don't use that one enough
No,
nowadays.
you don't.
Freaking nitwit.
It's got some bite to it.
He does. What a nitwit. And he would just laugh aimlessly.
I like that, though. That's charming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Somebody who's
At least
just
he's
got a
happy.
Jack. Yeah, somebody's just got kind of like a ha 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 ha.
It's better than just screaming aimlessly.
Right.
It's better than that.
I was thinking this systemic depression of yeah.
Or just being the sad boy and just sighs.
Yeah,
like,
just
sad boy.
Just an emo kid sitting on the corner.
He was just like, ha 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 ha. Like,
The opposite of an
endearing to me.
overconfident fuck boy is sad boy.
Does it ever bother you that people who were clearly insane and couldn't speak English and came are able to procure 160 lands of rural Kansas and live this really what I would consider to be a lavish lifestyle if you've got that much land and a 2-acre vegetable garden and a fucking corral and all kinds of shit
Because land was $1.50 for 5 acres,
Man, we need to go
it's
back.
true. I know we do need to go back. People would just murder you, and there'd be no record.
We would be
Angela. People just murder.
well, she knows the story apparently.
Great time. All the unaccounted murders.
Spoiler alert.
Make America great again. Let's go back to that.
1870s
Everyone's got 150
rural
fucking
Kansas.
acres.
You can
And they're just
murder all you
murdering the
want.
shit out of each other.
Murder all over the place.
Anyway, the traveling woman. No.
Call back.
Call back.
Damn, there's a thread, maybe.
Kate, who is the daughter or wife of John Jr., she considered herself a healer and psychic, and that's how she attracted people towards the inn. And she also promised she could just cure illnesses. We don't really know how. She also conducted seances and was known for her free love spiritualism. Less than a year after the Benders arrived, some very mysterious disappearances and horrific murders began to occur. First, there was a man named Jones, I'm assuming his last name, who had his skull crushed and his throat cut. And he was discovered in Drum Creek. So that was in 1871. So they bought this property in 1870. And by May of 1871, they found this guy with his skull crushed and throat cut.
Already.
Couldn't make it a year.
Then in February 1872, the bodies of 2 men were found who had the same injuries as the previous guy. So within 2 years of them moving on to this trail, people started avoiding that area altogether and try to find different ways to go to the west. I mean, that was kind of the reputation that that area.
You want to go down Skull Crush Trail?
Why is it named that? No bother.
This is like an early
luck.
version of Waze. Just let you know where to go. You don't want. You want to stay from there. There's a lot of skull crushing in that area.
Yeah. So, okay, Angela. Earlier, you were saying this was one of the main
This was one of
paths
the main
west.
ways to go west, and then within 2 years, people were like, "No, I'll find a different way."
So that was
traveling out to California and just heading west. That was one of the known safe ways to get out there. And then all of a sudden, it was like, "No,
Nope.
your
Bone
head's going to
crush.
explode."
It went from Kansas Trail to
Yeah.
Skull Crush Throat Slitty Trail, and then everybody was like, "Nah, I'm not
Yeah,
fucking
I'll
And then
go.
they're like, "Have you
We'll go
seen
around.
Blood River?" They're like, "I'm out."
going through Nebraska."
In the winter of 1872, so this is still within that 2 years of them buying this, George Lancourt and his daughter Mary Ann left Independence, Kansas,
Yes.
to resettle in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hawkeyes.
Oh, all right, go them.
Go them. Enthusiasm appreciated.
Go them sports.
Sports.
Sportsies.
Holy shit.
That's a fucking promo.
Sports.
That's a fucking promo.
That's tight.
Well, the sad thing is these people were never seen again. So George,
The laugh in your
Son of a
voice doesn't make it
bitch.
sound so sad.
You hurt this
They were
bastard.
never seen again.
terrible.
I hurt this bastard.
George and Marianne were never seen again. They happen to have a really good friend, though. Their neighbor, who lived in Independence, Kansas, Dr. William Henry York. He was like, I never heard back from them. Where did they go? So he went looking for them. And the sad thing is, Dr. York never returned home either. The other problem is, for the Benders at least, is that Dr. York had two brothers who were like, well,
Where the fuck's my
where
brother?
the hell's my
Yeah.
brother? And
Oh
so,
man, a brother's revenge. That's gotta be fucking cold.
and one of his brothers was a colonel.
Oh, shit.
So he was just very intense.
It's
Colonel
on.
Ed York.
Motherfucker's name is Ed.
This is gonna be a
and-
Coen Brothers movie. You mark my
Oh,
words.
yeah. Ooh.
And a Kansas State Senator, Alex York.
The other one was a senator?
Yeah.
A colonel and a
Yes.
senator?
This fucking hornet's nest
Yeah.
is just
Fucked up.
alive right now.
You fucked with the wrong family, yo.
Yep.
So they were like, they knew his travel plans. He let them know, hey, I'm going to go find my neighbors. Never returned. So the York brothers were like, what the fuck? Colonel York gathered about 50 men
It's a posse.
and questioned every traveler along the trail and visited every single homestead in that area. So he arrived at the Bender's Inn. He asked about his brother. And they were honest. They said, yeah, he stayed with us, but maybe he ran into trouble with the Native Americans. And, Colonel York was like, sure, I guess that could happen since we just relocated all of them somewhere else. I bet
A little
they're kind of
ticked off right
angry,
now.
Classic
you know.
fake news ass bullshit.
However, he later returned to the inn with some armed men because he had been informed that a woman had fled from the inn after being threatened with knives by Elvira Bender.
Oh, okay.
So when they went to go question Elvira, she pretended she couldn't understand English, and they denied the claim. But all of a sudden, Elvira, who apparently couldn't understand English, all of a sudden started saying, oh, that woman's a witch. She cursed my coffee. And then
Didn't
she
even
was like,
wake me
get out
up?
of my house. So they were like, okay, so this woman knows way more English than we thought she could. And everything about her response and her reaction, they were like, oh, these people totally did something to all these people. But they didn't have any evidence. They could just tell, like, there's something up here. Neighboring communities around the area began to make accusations about Osage County, which is where they lived. They were like, everyone around here has been disappearing. Like, what's going on? And they kind of were blaming Osage County. So a meeting was arranged, and the Osage Township began, they had like 75 locals there, and including John Bender Sr. and John Bender Jr. So, like, the Bender men actually came to this meeting. And they were like, well, we're going to have a search warrant. And we're going to search every homestead from Big Hill Creek to Drum Creek. And no one knows where the hell that is, but
Do
just
it.
so you have it.
Yeah,
there you go.
7 miles
There it is.
So-
northeast of Cherryvale.
Do it up right.
Yep. The problem was, so these guys were at that meeting, and they made this big declaration. No one kept an eye on the Benders, and they all split.
Nice.
Sneaky
the
ass
classic. What's it called?
Okie doke.
I was about to say okey doke. I swear I was going to say okey doke.
The
It's
okie
a
doke.
classic okey doke. As the
Okey-doke the shit
scholars.
out of 'em.
Okay, doke.
It's like Sun Tzu. It's in the art of war. It's the classic okie doke.
Keep your friends close, your enemies. Okey doke 'em.
Okey-doke.
Okey-doked.
So it would have been about 3 days before anyone even noticed that these people had been gone. They abandoned all their farm animals, they were all unfed, and also there was a bunch of bad weather, so the search had to be held off. But eventually, a giant mob showed up, and the search party at the end began with Colonel York. He was like there. He's like, where's my brother? What's going on? Let's do this. So they get there, and the cabin was empty of food and personal belongings and had a really foul odor. Then they realized there was a trap door and clotted blood on the floor. So they realized there must be something in there. So they actually took all these men and, like, moved the entire cabin. They're like, there are bodies. We're moving the whole structure over.
Why did they just open the door? Why did they just open the trap door?
It's probably locked. or
Well,
something.
it was a dumb move
See?
because there was nothing there. However, they started to explore the entire grounds around the cabin and the garden. And in the soil of the orchard, they found Dr. York's body, buried face down. And they found 9 graves, but it was getting dark, so they came back the next morning. They found 8 bodies in the 9 graves and a body in the well with a bunch of body parts. Every skull was bashed with what was assumed was a hammer, and every throat was cut.
They double-tapped evering.
Exactly.
Everything.
I was going to say, come on.
The only one that didn't have any of these injuries was the body of a young girl, and but they suspected that maybe she had been strangled or buried alive.
Ugh. I think I'll take the strangling over the buried alive. I don't know.
State Senator Alex York said that's one of the brothers. What is so fucking funny?
About that, exactly.
Trying to think about would you have to be strangled or buried alive?
And having to have the labor decision, anyway.
And then both him and Kaz go,
That's a toughie.
So the next morning...
It just goes right into it like it's nothing.
I would say I'd rather be strangled.
The horrible way to die. It's like,
Instead of... Yeah.
I'd rather be strangled than like that suffering of the buried alive type of
quicker.
thing.
No, it was
I
great.
agree.
It
That
was
makes
fucking
sense.
great.
So a Kansas newspaper reported that a friend of the Benders named Brockman was, they were like hanging him from a beam in the inn until unconscious, and then kept reviving him and then hanging him and then reviving him. Like,
Oh my God.
like what they did to Deadpool.
basically to get information out of him.
Holy
because
shit.
they were like, you're his friend, like, what have you done? What's going on? Don't feel bad for this guy because he was arrested 23 years later for the rape and murder of his own daughter. So
Whoa.
he was
Okay.
kind of a piece of shit anyway.
Seems that
All
way.
right,
Yeah. Reporters from as far away as New York City and Chicago came when they heard about these murders. I mean, this is 1870, so it's like you got
Someone's got to get on a horse.
That
like,
is
you gotta-
massive
yeah.
news.
Yeah, it is.
Someone's got to make a sojourn to fucking like
Yeah,
deliver this news.
That is like that's a journey. It's a pilgrimage, really.
Oh God.
And the weird thing was too in 1870, it's like we've always been the way we are. The cabin was eventually destroyed by souvenir people. It's like
Souvenir people?
like the souvenir hunters were like, someone killed a lot of people here, and just like kind of.
I want
took
this
that-
log.
We have
Yeah.
always been horrible creatures. We've always been horrible
Yeah.
creatures.
Murderbilia.
Yep.
Memorabilia. Yep.
Ugh.
So that state senator, Alex York, so Dr. York's brother, he offered $1,000 reward, which in today's money would be about $20,000 for the Bender's family arrest. And then the governor actually offered $2,000, which was about $40,000, equivalents to 2019 money. There are some people who did escape from these people. And so based on some testimonials of people who had stayed at the inn and escaped, this is what was found to be the way in which they would attack and murder their people.
Oh, jeez.
The host would give the guest a seat of honor at the head of the table, which was positioned over the trapdoor.
Oh, my.
God.
And that was next to a curtain. So there would be this curtain that their back would be, that would be behind their back. And Kate, because she was cute and charismatic and attractive, she would distract people, talk to them. And then John and John Sr. would come from behind the curtain, open it up like, surprise, motherfucker, and then strike the guest on the right side of the skull with a hammer, and then the victim's throat was cut by one of the women.
So probably because he was right-handed? Is that why? Like it was just like a ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, I would assume on the right side, so yeah, must have been.
Yeah.
And then the body was dropped through the trap door, and that would go down to the cellar where they would kind of prep the body and they would strip it, take all their belongings, and then they would just bury the property in the orchard. And not every victim was wealthy,
No.
so they kind of just did this for
Thrill
fun.
kill.
Yeah, they just liked to do it.
That is always
It's so
fascinating me.
ordinary.
There is just a certain switch in the human brain where I just dig making people end.
Yeah.
I just dig seeing someone knowing that they're not around anymore and it's because of me. That I looked at someone and said, I don't want you to exist anymore. I get to do it, and then I get to go on with my day. Hee hee hee.
So a man named William Pickering said that when he had refused to sit near the wagon cloth because there were stains on it,
Ugh.
he was threatened by Kate with a knife. Another man, a Catholic priest, said he saw one of the Bender men concealing a large hammer, which made him feel a little uneasy.
Oh my fucking God.
So
yes.
he dipped.
Yeah, I'm done.
2 men went to the inn because Kate was she said she was a psychic reader and everything. Yeah. So they decided to stay for dinner, and they felt really uncomfortable sitting next to the cloth.
Oh, that's Claire
More psychic than
sentience,
Claire.
right? Claire sentience.
Yes,
I think
Clairvoyance.
It's a sentience.
Claire.
Just spidey sense.
Airfield.
like something doesn't feel
Basically,
right.
just this ain't right.
Yep.
I don't like things behind.
I don't like to stand in front of bloodstained curtains.
Yeah, I don't like
Just
windows.
They ate their meal at like the main shop because there was like the general store in the front. But Kate became very abusive towards them. And then all of a sudden, 2 Bendermen, the men just came out from behind the curtain. The Bendermen.
Bendermen.
And they were like, why were they back there? And they just kind of just like paid and left, which probably saved their lives.
Yeah.
And then also when people were scouring the cabin, bullet holes were found like in the roof and the sides, which kind of meant like some people tried to fight for their life maybe and kind of
Like,
didn't get out.
Yeah, imagine having that sidearm like right between your legs with your your like left hand on it in case anything
This totally
is
is a
amiss.
Coen Brothers movie waiting
Yes.
to happen, by the way.
I'm writing notes,
No
by the
doubt.
way. This is fucking
Someone
amazing.
get in touch with them.
No one really found these people, the Benders.
Are you
they
kidding me?
escaped.
They
No
got
one really
away
found them.
completely.
They're still out there today.
There was a lot of
Or their descendants.
There were a lot of vigilantes that were like, oh, we got them, we killed them all. But they were like, but they never actually brought their bodies. So some people were just kind of claiming stuff, and no one was like,
Just to
well, you
give
didn't
people a
bring
false sense of
them.
security.
Right.
Jesus, back in
Bill,
the
if
day.
you bring me antlers one more time and expect me to believe that's a pelvis, I'm going to punch you.
How can you look at antlers and go pelvis? I'm like,
I
now
know.
I'm saying,
Yeah,
Pelvis
no.
from antlers. Bill.
okay.
Okay.
I'm not. I looked it up that one time.
I'm not. No.
You got me once.
I'm not a dummy.
I mean, there was some records of them like buying train tickets, but at some point, like the mom and dad kind of went off on their own, and then John and Kate went off on their own. And the news of the escape spread and searched everywhere, and there was like a search that continued on and off for like 50 years.
Jeez.
And unfortunately, during that time, it's like if 2 women were ever seen traveling together, obviously they need to be asked if they're Elvira and Kate, even though people said like the husband and wife, and then the other
Went
2
together.
went off.
Ah,
But it's
yeah.
like, 2 women off on their own.
Isn't that
obviously.
weird?
Yeah,
Unaccompanied.
it's very-
What are you ladies
Thumbs
doing?
up.
So, yeah, guys, everything about this whole situation is making me feel very uneasy. Kansas doesn't really feel like home for me.
Never was a fan. Now I'm even less of a fan.
No,
It's terrible
not a
stuff.
good situation.
They have good baseball.
You
they?
would care about the baseball.
I do care about the baseball.
I'm sure they've got
No, I
all this,
would, I do.
all the murdering, but the baseball's good.
Yes.
Like murdering is one thing. Everyone's got murdering. But